what kind of investor type this radio ads would be a good fit for?
That's a really great question. Let me tell you who it's not a good fit for first,
Okay.
and then we'll move into who it is. Real estate is a great way to make money. I am all for anyone making money and any additional money that you can get your hands on, especially looking at our economy. So if you know that you're not necessarily looking at this to really build a real estate business, I wouldn't touch it. Radio is a really great legacy builder. And it comes with that credibility piece. Like once you're there, people start believing that you can almost resolve all of their problems. I'll tell people all the time, I'm like, you can make an ad and make it very clear, like, hey, I buy properties cash. At some point, you will have someone call in that says, do you do mobile homes? Or do you know someone that does mobile homes? Hey, do you do land? Hey, I know that you buy homes, so then do you rent them back out? Because my lease is ending, I'm potentially looking at, moving out of my current lease and finding a new one. And so if you know that you're not necessarily, looking at this to really build up a real estate business, I would probably say don't touch it because like with the legacy piece, people are going to keep your information and want to call you again, or at least refer people to you. So it doesn't necessarily work out really well for that. It works brilliantly for people that are really clear on wanting to truly service people and help them. The more tools on your tool belt, honestly, the more successful you'll be on radio, or at least your willingness to connect them to someone else that can't help you, or that you can actually assist. And I mean by that, like maybe referral lead. Maybe there's an area that you're like, hey, I don't necessarily service that, but you still attracted a really motivated seller from that area. Sometimes people will dead those leads out. They're like, oh, well, that's too far. I can't service it. Radio is going to pull in a very high motivated person. You don't want to just dead that. There's a great opportunity to just at least check your network and maybe JV it, right, with someone else that isn't actually in that area. Or again, with mobile homes, maybe you don't actually want to deal with mobile homes. Truly, in the United States, there's a buyer for anything. I mean, you can sell dirty socks on eBay. Like there's someone who's willing to actually pick it up and buy it, even if that you're not necessarily wanting to deal with it. So take advantage of that and also make yourself some money by getting a referral lead. It could be even retail, right? Like some people are like, hey, I only want to buy in this number range, and anything outside of that, I'm going to count it as retail. Well, don't dead that. That could also still be an opportunity to connect with a local realtor. And the fact that you're running on radio gives you even credibility with local realtors as well. Sometimes they'll just call you directly.
That's a great idea. So if just so that I understand clearly, you're saying radio is not good for someone who's sort of like dabbling in real estate investing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great for people that are serious about their investing because, it needs some like time and effort on your part. It's not like you're sending one letter, you're investing in a new marketing channel. So no, that makes sense. And then for someone who's getting started, I'm sure you get this question asked a lot. What are like the best radio channels to get on? Like how does like, let's say if I want to start radio ads, how do I even get started? Like, do I start calling the radio stations? Like what does the process look like?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this. Radio isn't difficult, but there is a lot of due diligence is what I usually warn people. I'm like, it's the type of channel where it's a lot of due diligence, especially up front, just to get it rolling. Let me start by explaining radio in general. There's probably 250 radio markets across the US. A market could be, and I'm just giving this as an example. Miami is its own market. Then Tampa is its own market. Orlando is its own market. Phoenix is its own market. Things like that. It's kind of split. Sometimes it can be one, huge city, or sometimes it's a combination, like DFW, the Dallas Fort Worth, is an actual radio market. So there's a lot of options there. And within that, you have FM and then AM stations. So FM are usually like your music stations, country music, what we call like hot top 40, right? We call the pop hits, oldies, maybe classic rock, maybe alternative rock. And AM are going to be your sports and talk stations there. That's just to give you like kind of like a very baseline. But in terms of starting with radio, I always tell people to just take a split second to really figure out what your target audience is and who those people are. Because if you know that you need to reach a very mature aged audience, then we need to prep for stations that are going to fall in line with who you are already servicing or who you have the most success with already. Like based on your deal so far, and maybe you haven't closed any deals yet, just in terms of pacing of conversations, what are the patterns around the people that you're talking about? Is it in a certain age bracket? Are they in a certain income bracket that these people are kind of falling into? And then we can kind of match that in terms of radio. But in general, absolutely, you could just call an actual radio station. The best way to start, and really free, is Google. I would go radio stations and then type in whatever your actual market is. If you're in Lubbock, Texas, I would go radio stations, Lubbock, Texas. I would go radio stations, Phoenix. It's going to show you a drop-down menu of station options, and they all vary in terms of ownership. iHeart is probably one of the largest, nationally known companies. They roughly 9 times out of 10, you're going to have an iHeart station in your market, unless you're like in the middle of nowhere and iHeart didn't care to pick it up. But usually there's going to be an iHeart company somewhere within that market, and iHeart could own anywhere between 3 to 5 stations within that one market. I think DFW specifically, they probably own about 8 radio stations within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, somewhere along those lines. What you're looking for is to find just to get started, is just a connection within at least 2, I'd say about 2 ownership groups. So you have iHearts, you have Odyssey, Beasley Media Group, Hubbard Media Group. Those are another big ones. You want to pick at least 2 ownership groups to call. Any of the sales reps can talk to you about all of the stations underneath their umbrella, but it's at their specific ownership. So iHeart can only talk to you about iHeart stations. They're going to pretend like they can talk to you about their competitor, but they're not going to talk very highly about them because that's their competitor. So iHeart can only really have a conversation with you about iHeart stations. That's totally fine. You want to call them and roughly explain, and this is the way I highly recommend everyone start the process, is that you want to warn you're going to reach what we call a radio sales representative, or a sales rep is what I mostly say. And sales reps say that as well amongst each other. A sales rep is literally the person who, if you were to call them, you may reach maybe their business manager, who then connects you to the sales representative. They're almost like an account manager. So they'll talk you through the process. If there's any information you want on a station, they'll provide it. If you negotiate the actual contract or negotiate your radio deal, it's going to go through them. And then if you actually do keep that deal and continue advertising on that station, they almost become your account manager as well. So in very basic steps, I would do a quick Google search of radio stations, whatever your actual area is that you're looking to set up radio in. I would pay attention to the ownership groups and pick maybe 1 or 2, call the number, and I would warn them that you're just starting this process for the first time. You're like, hey, I'm just looking to collect information. If you don't warn them that you're just looking to collect information, you'll be on the call about 45 minutes unnecessarily. And they'll be trying to pluck apart every little element of your business. Oh, do you have a budget? How much do you want to spend? What do you want to be, right? It's a salesperson. So if I was recommending that to someone doing it for the first time, I would just start with a quick Google search, tell them that you're just looking to collect some information. And I would request that they send you any information on their actual audience for their station. And then you want to look to make sure that this is an audience that does actually match up to your target audience. Again, if I'm looking for a mature aged audience that actually owns a home, and the sales rep starts telling me that all of my top 40s hit station, we are #1 for millennials and Gen Z. That's not my station, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of like getting an understanding of who I should be in front of. All stations know their audiences well enough to pitch it because they need to for sales. They are going to say, hey, we've got the #1 audience for working women 35 plus. We've got the #1 audience for, affluent listeners. They know those things. And if you know that you don't work well really with the affluent, high income, highly educated, to cross that type of station off your list.
So rather than you sharing with the salesperson, this is our audience, and then they kind of, manipulate the data to make you feel like that's the right fit. You just say, I'm collecting information, these 8 radio, stations that you are managing, what is the target audience for each of the radio stations, correct?
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
Yeah, you definitely could say, but honestly, in my experience, if you say, hey, my audience is roughly 35 plus or 45 plus, you still want to pay attention to the data yourself, right? Like it's a sales rep. So I find that in some cases, they'll try and slightly start to tweak your data down the line of like, okay, well, you already told me that you want to reach 35 plus. They will dig through their data to try and find anything that keeps you underneath their umbrella, even if it's not necessarily the best fit. That's why I usually just recommend, just say, hey, I'm looking to collect some information. We're looking to pick up maybe 2 or 3 stations. Starting this process off by just calling a couple of, stations in the area, wanted to connect with you guys and collect some information on your audience.